Hello folks, here today to speak about another Rahu transit coming up. Rahu will be moving into Bharani Nakshatra on June the 14th and will remain there till February 20th of 2023. Now, of course, that date may vary depending on where you are in the world, and also note that this is the mean node calculation and not the true node. If you're seeing it from the true node perspective, then the entry would be on July the 12th. Yeah, the same day that Saturn returns to Capricorn. It would be July the 12th till February the 6th of 2023. Now, thank you to those who have subscribed and those who comment, and for the rest, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the right hand side. And one more thing before I get started, if you need to contact me or you want to find me on social media, I have put the links in the description box below. So let's get started. Right, so first I want to speak about Bharani, and then I'm going to get into Rahu's transit. Yeah. I've already spoken about the impact on all signs for Rahu moving through Aries, and I will link that video below. Rahu in Aries can be somewhat impulsive, but not so much in Bharani. Though, it's still Aries, so there will be a concentration on more self-driven goals and plans rather than group and couple-driven plans. And many people may be questioning and even changing some of their belief systems at this time. Now, for part of this transit, a small portion of this transit till July, Saturn will be aspecting Aries from Aquarius, so stunting that Rahu impulse to act and to forge ahead. During Rahu's transit through Bharani, we also have to pay attention to Mars's transits at the same time, because Aries is ruled by Mars. In fact, at this time, Mars's transits are very relevant because Saturn is also connecting to Mars through Dhanishta. And Dhanishta is all about tuning into our environment, tuning into ourselves, because ultimately it wants us to simplify life by doing that, yeah? And because Bharani's ruling deity is Yama, those who have not tuned in or have been resisting changes may experience quick and sudden endings now with this transit. Rahu in Bharani will basically bring the energy of Yama to all that is connected to Bharani in your chart. Yama is the deity signifying death, transformation, but also moral discipline. And I'm going to talk more in depth about that in this video. Bharani also signifies the womb. So revival and rebirth themes will be very prominent now. In fact, that whole rebirthing process is actually a perpetual theme with Bharani. So see what's connected to Bharani in your chart, whether there are any planets there, to get a hint of where you will experience that. If you've been resisting change, you will have to embrace it now. And this is further amplified by the movement of Saturn, Ketu, and Jupiter transits also this year that point to a lot of endings, that point to a lot of changes. Now, death, rebirth, transformation can simply just mean letting go of an old way of thinking, of an old cycle. So essentially, something needs to go in order to welcome the next chapter, the next step in your life. It could be a habit, it could be a person, a place, a thing. It's basically a time for release, letting go of the old and ushering in the new. The controlling planet for Bharani is Venus. So the ups and downs or changes can take place in relationship matters, in money matters, with your finances. In fact, the very day that Rahu moves into Bharani, on June the 14th, we see a Rahu-Venus conjunction becoming exact in Aries. And at that time, both will be going into the fourth pada of Scorpio Navamsha. So again, pointing to challenges, perhaps in relationships. And again, being that it's Scorpio Navamsha, it can bring sudden endings in relationships. If you're not in a relationship, it could bring some passionate attractions. It could bring an affair. And Rahu moving through Bharani, connecting with Venus in Mars's sign, could point to shortcuts, taking shortcuts with money matters, with relationship matters. It can also be outright deception and manipulation, cheating, lying, that sort of thing. And this is a prevalent theme for Rahu moving through the Scorpio Navamsha till mid-August. So from mid-July to mid-August, I would say, try to be forthright and honest in your dealings with others. Bharani's deity, Yama, also governs the principle of dharma, of duty, of discipline, of doing the right thing. So because of that, Rahu's transit going through Bharani, I would say dishonest and unethical actions can bring harsh consequences, if not now, then in the future. And this is even further confirmed with the aspect of a strong retrograde Saturn from Aquarius till mid-July. Yeah. Now let's look at Bharani more closely to understand what to expect from this transit. Bharani denotes a dharmic, a morally strict, and you could say even a kind of a self-righteous stance. The deity of Bharani is Yama. Yama is not only the god of death, but it's also associated with upholding a dharmic way of life. Basically a code of social morality. So the energy of Bharani works toward preservation in order to establish order in society. Despite its fierceness, it's not really a destructive nakshatra. Rather, the fierceness is for the purpose of imposing that social discipline to maintain order. The Shakti of Bharani is the power to take things away and move on. Or you could say also the power to cleanse, to remove impurities. And one can also become very much aware of the limits of time in this nakshatra. After all, Yama was the stepbrother of Saturn. Bharani makes us face our mortality and realize the values with sacrifice. Right? Sort of like delayed gratification. I will not do this because it's not the right thing, and I will sacrifice this short-term pleasure or enjoyment for something longer term. That's the essence there. There's also a theme of restraint with Bharani. So in the mythology, if you're familiar with it, Yama's sister wanted to have an intimate relationship with him, but he held back and restrained himself from getting involved with her. Right? So that's that strict, that morality theme there playing out. In Vedantic philosophy, Yama represents a series of right living, or you could say ethical rules within yogic philosophy. These are essentially restraints for proper conduct as given in the Vedas and the Yoga Sutras. They are essentially a form of 8 moral imperatives, or rules, you could simply say, of which Yama, social discipline, is the first of those 8 rules. So so when I say social discipline, it's not just about that moral code for ourselves, but rather how we interact with others. And the yamas that are mentioned in the Patanjali Sutras are, so we have ahimsa, we have satya, we have asteya, we have brahmacharya, and we have aparigraha. And I'm going to actually just kind of address each one of them. The first one, ahimsa, is essentially all types of violence towards others, towards yourself also. So how can this play out? Well, we create violence most often in our mind by our reaction to events and to others, by creating judgment, criticism, blame, anger, irritation, and the list goes on. Though being non-violent does not mean forgetting to be compassionate toward yourself. Yeah, so like you can't just say that, yes, you must practice this, even if it hurts yourself. Right, so you need to be still mindful of self-defense, which is relevant in some situations. And also, of course, something simple as creating boundaries. That needs to come first, and that's what we mean by practicing compassion and love for yourself first. Another example of this is not eating well, like junk food, or having like some toxic substances, and that creates violence against your own body. So again, every time you say no to harmful food or substances, you're essentially showing compassion for yourself. Yeah. So the second is satya. Satya is basically, the word itself is truth, but it's more than that. You have to align your thoughts, actions, and words. So what you say and what you think and how you behave should be consistent. When they don't align, you can feel anxious, stressed, or irritated. So you need to know your core values, your own truth, in order to practice this. Yeah. Third is asteya, which is essentially non-stealing. This is, I think the best way to define it is not taking what is not freely given. Right? So steering away from manipulating others, exploiting others. It may seem easy on the surface, but it can be actually quite challenging to practice, because it's not necessarily stealing, it's also taking something that is not earned. Right? Like you're using something of someone's, and they, for perhaps some circumstance, they can't refrain you from using that, but they're not happy about it. Right? It could be something as simple as that. So it's not just not committing theft, it's more than that. On the social level, it could be like opposition to exploitation, oppression, social injustice. The next one, brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is most commonly understood as celibacy, but it's not as simple as that. If you break it down, so Brahma is what? Brahma is supreme consciousness. And Charya is what? Charya basically means path. So path to that supreme consciousness or higher consciousness, however you want to see it. The other way to look at it is basically practicing moderation in everything that you do. So trying to avoid extremes. Why practicing moderation? Because when you practice moderation, it leads to conserving your energy. And this can be applicable to everything in life. Eating, speaking, working, any way that you are using energy. So the final yama is called what? aparigraha, tricky one for me to pronounce. This is basically like non-hoarding or non-coveting. In other words, not hanging on to or hoarding more possessions than you actually need. So practice letting go of everything that you don't need. Maybe giving it to someone who does need it. The sutras basically tell us that worldly objects cannot be possessed anyway, because for the simple reason that they're all subject to change and ultimately will be destroyed. So when we cling on to things, the other thing, if you notice, is when you cling on to something, you lose the ability to be open and to receive what you need, because you're too busy clinging on to something that perhaps doesn't serve you anymore anyway. And this can actually apply to what's in your mind also, because we tend to like cling on to, we can like create a self-imposed prison in our mind by holding on to past grievances. So again, the lesson is the same. The lesson is the same, which is declutter. Not just in your physical environment, like you're in your immediate environment, in your physical environment, but also in your heart, in your mind. And of course, it doesn't happen instantly. It's a practice. And this takes us back to the essence of what Bharani is, which is self-restraint. Self-restraint in actions, in words, in thoughts. Now, the other thing I want to like briefly touch on is Yama also has a connection to our ancestors. Bharani also very much signifies our ancestral lineage, for the simple reason that Yama's role is to carry the soul from the body to the realm of the ancestors. And for all of us, whether we like it or not, our ancestors live within us. Now, of course, the question is how much of this enriches our lives and how much of this enslaves us. Of course, we are only here. We are only who we are because of our forefathers, what they learnt, what they knew, their skills, their perception of life. We have imbibed all of this knowingly or unknowingly within us. But if you let them live too strong within you, then you will not have a life of your own. This is why certain rituals are performed after death, so that our ancestors don't try to live through us too strongly. Because if they live through you too strongly, your life is essentially wasted. You will not be a fresh life, but rather a carbon copy of an old life. And every culture has its own rituals and traditions when a loved one dies, in order to distance themselves from that loved one in different ways. In the Vedic tradition, every year there's a time to devote certain practices to our ancestors, and that's known as Pitrupaksh. And during these rituals, people will pay homage to generations of those that have gone before them, so that they don't try to live through us. In this way, essentially what you're doing is you are creating more and more distance every year from your ancestors, so that your life operates as a fresh life, as a new possibility. So it doesn't become a repetition of the past. With these rituals, we want to ensure that their influence is limited in our life. We show, of course, appreciation for who they were, as well as their contributions, but at the same time, we want to create distance so that they don't live through us. Yeah? So this transit of Rahu through Bharani is actually a good time to perform such rituals connected to your ancestors. and that letting go process will happen very quickly. The power of manifestation is very strong in Bharani, especially when you take steps to remove unhealthy, toxic, could even be toxic circumstances. And if you remove these situations, or even relationships for that matter, in your life now, new opportunities will come instantly. All creative activities are favored by Bharani. It's good for marital activities, sexual activities, procreative activities, agriculture, asceticism also. So spiritual practices, fasting, any kind of purification rituals, beginnings, endings, as well as dealing with children. In fact, the practice of so if this transit is giving you trouble, the practice of pranayama, yoga, and meditation are actually very very good remedies. Yeah. Now, Bharani, being the foundation of Venetian energy, can give us access to tremendous occult knowledge also. Venus is the only planet that has the power to bring the dead back to life through Sanjeevani mantras. Right? So in this way, this period would mark an excellent time to study any occult subjects, especially if you have a strong Venus in your own chart. Rahu, of course, what does Rahu do? Rahu, as usual, energizes the planet that it connects to in your chart. So look at that planet's significations. Its natural significations and its significations in your chart. So the lordships as well as the Garga, yeah? Especially if your sun, moon, or rising sign is in this constellation, you will, of course, be most impacted. Now, Rahu provides the thirst for experience, the desire to connect. So if it is connecting with Venus, Moon, 7th Lord, 11th Lord, or 2nd Lord, then this can mean a relationship coming along. And Bharani, as I mentioned, has the power to manifest anything very quickly. So with Rahu moving there, this will happen instantly. Yeah. This is especially so if you're going through Venus or Rahu Dasha or Antardasha. That combination of the Mars and Venus energy in Bharani can bring passionate affairs too. It can bring very quick attractions. It can also bring quick money-making schemes to your attention. That Mars and Venus dance is basically that masculine, feminine. It's that masculine and feminine principle. So relationships could end quickly, and then new ones could also begin very quickly. The ability to create something new in your life is powerful with Rahu moving through here. So see where Aries falls in your chart. Because we're talking about Aries, this can relate to your own image also, recreating or reinventing yourself. If that's what you wanted to do, it's a very good time for that. In fact, it's an excellent transit to transform your image, to be pioneering in some aspect of your life, to be bold, to take the lead, to create something new, whether it's a project, whether it's a business, whether it's a new career, whether it's a new relationship, anything. Now, whereas Kritika had a connection to foster parenting, adoption, and Rohini had a connection to surrogacy, Bharani actually has a connection to step-families. So it could be that your relationship is bringing this kind of family structure into your life now. This connection, of course, is due to the story of Chaya, who was Saturn's mother, becoming the stepmother of Yama. Yeah, the ruling deity of Bharani. But of course, these relationships may not flow smoothly at first, as we saw in the story. Now let's get back to Rahu's transit in Bharani and the corresponding D9 placements. Now, Bharani spans from 1320 to 2640 degrees of Aries. Rahu will start its transit in Pada 4 of Bharani in the Navamsha of Scorpio on June the 14th. At the beginning of this transit, Rahu is making an exact conjunction with Venus, as we spoke about. So we know that relationships may feature at this time. It can result in some just like some ups and downs in relationships, inappropriate relationships, maybe even could manifest. Secret affairs could also be revealed at this time. So because we're talking about Bharani, there may be harsh consequences for if there's some kind of deception, dishonesty involved. After Venus leaves Aries in mid-June, Mars enters Aries at the end of June, reaching an exact conjunction with Rahu on August the 1st, also in Scorpio Navamsha. And at this time, Saturn's aspect is no longer on Aries to mitigate some of the possible effects of this explosive conjunction. So some caution is worth exercising at that time, like towards the very, very end of July and August 1st. After August 1st, it starts to wane, that Mars-Rahu conjunction. And I think this is kind of like, I would say this is the toughest bit of the transit, as it's, again, Scorpio Navamsha. So Rahu in Aries in D1 is going into 8th position from itself, right? So it can bring some fears, some phobias, suspicions, anxiety, especially if you've been taking shortcuts for quick gains. Rahu moves through Pada 4, the Scorpio Navamsha, from June the 14th till August the 16th. On August the 16th, Rahu's transit takes it into Libra Navamsha. This is a very strong transit for Rahu in Pada 3 from August the 16th till October the 18th. Libra Navamsha is ruled by Venus, where Rahu does very well. And this is also good from the perspective of the D1, right? Because D1 Aries going into D7 Libra is that 1-7 axis getting activated. It's also Pushkara Navamsha Pada, suggesting fulfillment of desires at this time. It's a great period for relationships, for obtaining luxuries of all kinds. It's a good period for socializing. Any community or group activities can get a boost during this 2-month period. It's a good time to create and build, especially if you are doing so with others, right? Because we're talking about the Libra Navamsha here. Jupiter will also spend considerable time in this Navamsha Pada with Rahu, suggesting that luck will be on our side now. Any spiritual activities or practices will also get a boost now. On October 18th, Rahu enters Pada 2 of Bharani in the Navamsha of Virgo and remains there till December the 20th. In the Navamsha of Virgo, Rahu is at home and therefore performs very well. Here, Rahu will spend time with Mercury. Career opportunities now can be immense. So I would say take advantage of this time to build on the career front, especially if your career is connected to writing, communications, teaching, healthcare, law, medicine, that sort of thing. It's overall a good period for any kind of wealth generating activities, especially if you are in Rahu Dasha. Right? Learning a new subject is also favored now. And at this time, we will be experiencing the remaining 2 eclipses of the year, and in late October and early November. And the changes that these eclipses will bring will be positive and welcomed by many, especially in relationships. On December the 20th, Rahu will finally arrive in the first Pada of Bharani in the Leo Navamsha. And this is actually a very creative and ambitious Pada. And you can accomplish a lot here, especially if you go it alone. If you're doing this sort of work, which involves getting noticed, you can do very well. You can do very well now. If you have strong willpower and you have a well-placed Saturn, now you can see very good results depending on where Leo falls in your chart. It will remain in this pada till February the 20th, 2023, when Rahu moves into Ashwini. Now let's talk a little bit about Rahu. I've actually mentioned this in previous videos, but I'm going to do so again. Rahu represents pending karma. It's pending desire. It's a reason for rebirth. It's unfulfilled desire that the soul has a very etched memory of. Now, these desires can manifest as obsessions. These desires can also manifest as fears. Because it's a shadow planet, it impacts one very deeply on a psychological level. So, wherever Aries falls in your chart, you may experience some big shifts, and they will be swift changes. So, in order to really understand how it will affect you, you need to look at the following. You need to see the lordship of Rahu for your lagna. So, let's take Aries for an example. If you're an Aries lagna, then Rahu is your 11th lord, transiting the first house, leading to gains and fulfillment if you make changes to yourself, perhaps a new image. You can make good contacts and friends now, and increase your network circles too. Opportunities could come quite suddenly, and relationships, including friends, including contacts that are not working, could dissolve quickly too. This is especially so when Saturn resumes its transit in Aquarius early next year. Now, the second thing to see is whether any planets are situated in Bharani in your own chart and what they represent. So if you have personal planets in Bharani, you will of course be impacted directly by the transit. Let's take an example. So let's suppose you're a Cancer lagna and you have Mars sitting in Bharani. Then this would trigger your 5th and 10th house matters, as Mars rules both of these houses, right? So with that 8th lord Rahu transiting over Mars in that 10th house, where Mars is your Yogarika planet, you can see a big jump in your career, a new career direction, and maybe even a jump in your investments. You may make some fortunate contacts that can suddenly open new doors for you. And sudden recognition could also come your way. Because it is Rahu transiting here, you will get the opportunities to create and grow by taking risks and pursuing ideas that you did not dare to try in the past. The thing I've noticed with Rahu transits, and you will especially feel this if you're in Rahu Dasha or Antardasha, is that you have to act fast if you want to get results. The opportunities can come very quickly, but if there's too much caution and there's too much planning, it won't bring you results because the opportunities can disappear very quickly too. If you hesitate. This is a time to take leaps of faith in the areas that are impacted by Aries and represented by Rahu in your chart. The best time of the transit are between mid-August till mid-December, I would say. The last time we experienced Rahu transit in Bharani was from November 7th, 2003 till July 14th, 2004. So if you're old enough to remember that time frame, you may experience some similar themes come up in your life. Remember, as always, Dasha serves as the background. So if you are in Rahu or Venus Dasha or Antardasha, then this transit of Rahu is very relevant to you. Yeah. As usual, feel free to leave your comments. Do remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, folks. All the best. Cheers.